Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D-Shift podcast. And today we have a true expert on the show. I would like to introduce you to Dr. Janet Williams, and she is an amazing human being. Listen to this. She is a licensed physician, surgeon, and a board-certified gynecologist based in Los Angeles. Dr. Williams is also a certified life coach and hypnotist, helping midlife women overcome trauma, heartbreak, divorce, changes in libido, and menopause symptoms. So, hey, that about sums up my life. I'll tell you right there. So, Dr. Williams, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
And like I say, I'm so excited when we have real, true experts. Not that all my guests aren't experts in their own avenue, but we haven't had anybody come on as a medical doctor to talk about some of these things. So I think that's really fantastic. What got you into into medicine in general, and then into this very particular area of helping women deal with midlife stuff?
Right. So I actually come from a medical family, and so I was around medicine all of my life. But when I decided to go into medicine, I had a really strong interest in women's health issues. And then, once I did my training and got into practice, I started seeing a lot of women coming in around age 40, maybe a little bit before, maybe a little bit after, where they're starting to have problems with their libido. And the difficult thing about that is I heard them, I understood that, but I didn't have any real training in that. Like, we didn't get that training in obstetrics and gynecology when I was coming through. There just wasn't any information on sexual health and sexual medicine, as we call it now. And so that's where my interest was born, because it's such a huge area of our lives that definitely deserves attention. And yet I had no training on it. And I had gone through, I'd asked my mentors, and the answers that I got on what to do were really not very hopeful, And so that's how I came into my interest in this area.
Well, and thank you for pointing that out. I have had other doctors on the show, not talking about this topic, but saying, just generally for women and sexual health over 40, menopause, that there's still a lot of areas where it's not really crystal clear what's going on with our bodies, right, and why we're having some of these symptoms. So, do you see that this is changing? Do you see women are coming in more openly and talking about this with you as a physician, or?
Definitely. I'm so glad that it is changing, and there's a lot more research now for women that's taking place in terms of hormones, in terms of menopause, in terms of what we need to do. A few years back, there was a study that came out that scared everybody away from hormones. The Women's Health Initiative, and the way that they looked and analyzed the data made us afraid of hormones. And so what happened at that point is everything kind of shut down. All the doctors were like, we're not giving hormones because it's going to kill you. But what we now know is that that's not necessarily true, and that hormone therapy, menopausal hormone therapy, is actually a good option for a lot of people. And so, yes, the short answer is I do think that is changing. There's a lot of things changing in our opinions around sex and around aging that is helping to support that as well.
Yeah, and so I really like the fact that you talk about, and one of the things that you work with your clients on, or your patients on, is that the impact of just all of the things that can be happening at midlife, especially for the women listening in on this podcast, you may also be dealing with the stress of a divorce on top of everything else. Can you talk a little bit to that, and how all of those factors kind of tie into just our overall health at that time, but certainly maybe our feeling of how sexy we are and how desirable we are?
Right. Yeah. So to touch on that a little bit, in terms of our sexual health and wellness, When we talk about libido, people are like, I just don't feel like having sex anymore. My libido's shot. My mojo is gone. All of these things are basically, we're talking about desire. And desire, just like all of the different phases and parts of sexual function, is based on something called the biopsychosocial model. So there's biology that's involved, there's psychology that's involved, and then there's the social cultural factors in our world that influence our desire and actually can have an effect on our sexual function. And so you can imagine, or you don't have to imagine, that if you've got divorce going on, you're empty nesting, your body is changing, you might have aging parents, you might be dealing with an illness yourself, maybe your partner, you might be in a toxic relationship, you might have trauma from a past experience. All of these things are going to influence the biology, the psychology, and the socio cultural experience that we have, and can definitely negatively impact our libido. Like, who really wants to have sex if you're like, you've got all these things going on?
Yeah, if you're stressed
Nobody.
up.
Nobody.
You're just
And
trying to
so,
get through the day, let
yeah,
alone.
you're just trying to get through the day. But, having the realization that those things are actually impacting us is really empowering, because we can resolve some of those issues. We can learn how to manage the stress. We can work through some of our past traumas and get back to a better, more balanced, homeostatic
Okay.
place in our mind and body that allows us to then revisit those, the desire, and then kind of address the sexual function as a whole. So.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I think another thing that's kind of maybe obvious, and maybe I'm being oversimplified here, but if you're in a relationship with somebody you don't even like anymore, it's
Yeah.
perfectly normal, I'm guessing, not to have any desire to be sexually active with that individual, right?
It is, and there are different types of motivation for sex, and so when we always think about, like, is maybe the femme fatale, maybe the femme fatale like profile has a different motivation for sex than someone else, and so you might have libido with a toxic relationship, but there's a good chance that you won't. If your motivation is connection, if your motivation is mutual attraction and care, and you're dealing with a narcissistic blank hole, you know what
You
I
can
mean?
say it. You can say
Okay.
it.
You're dealing with a narcissistic ass, right? Like, you're probably, your motivation, if it's that connection, it's not going to like fuel your desire.
Right.
On the flip side, if your motivation is purely like physical, or you have some like codependent like things that are going on underneath the surface, then you may still have that desire libido there. So sometimes we'll see that with couples who have this toxic back and forth relationship. They're still having sex, but they're getting divorced,
Yes. Yes.
and that's probably where that plays in. The motivation behind the sex is not necessarily a healthy connection.
Right. And that's very true. I mean, I do have clients who are going to stay friends with benefits for a long time because that's
Hmm.
just the nature of their relationship and
Yeah.
what they, I guess, what each of them needs. And I'm not a therapist, so I can't go that I can't go down that road with them. But so let me ask you, what is normal change in libido as people age? Like, I'm 60, so I'm guessing, it's normal that I'm not as maybe motivated to meet people as I was when I was in my 20s. Is that like, I don't have that, there isn't that sort of like, have to be with the partner and sex is a big part of that. Is that normal as people age to have a decrease, or when
Yeah.
should it be an alarming thing, I guess? Or
So it's
is it
really
ever?
anything on the spectrum is normal. And for most people, you have ebbs and flows in sex throughout your lifetime, right? And it's normal if you're very sexually active and very interested in sex. And it's also normal if you're not, depending on whether or not you're distressed by it. And so if you are distressed by it and you're thinking, God, I want, like this, I'm missing this, I want this back. Like, what happened? Why am I not having it? That is a distressing thing, and that is not considered normal. The flip side, too, though, I will say, is that sometimes we just aren't thinking about sex. But it's not that that means that it's not still an option, you
Sure.
know? If you're not thinking about sex, it's just not like on the, priority list in your mind. That doesn't mean that it's gone. Like it means that you could put some focus to it and get that back. So I like to make that point, because one of the things that happens in our culture is our culture tells us that, okay, once you hit 50, 55, you're no longer sexy, you're no longer relevant. You stop doing that, you're a grandma, like who do you think you are? All of these things that are in our brains, in our mind, in our subconscious mind. And this is kind of where some of the hypnosis can come into play. But we have this like teaching, these negative thoughts about sex and our sexual confidence. Even growing up as a young person, you may have been told like it's not okay for a young woman to, hold herself in this way. It's not okay for a grandmother to want to have sex. Like if you're a widow, if you're divorced, like there's shame that is tied in a lot of times to these like stages in lives or experiences. And that can really limit us. And maybe a part of the reason why your libido is not there, because if your mind tells you, okay, you're not supposed to do that, then you'll be like, okay, well, let me shut it down. It's like, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So
So, yeah.
that's a perfect segue into the next question then is how does hypnotherapy or hypnosis fall into assisting women if they are struggling with, any of these symptoms, loss of libido, menopause, changes in their body, maybe not feeling as physically attractive to other people, which I think is mostly a mental thing, right?
Hmm.
Can you
Right.
talk a little bit about that whole idea of changing our mental thoughts about ourselves through hypnosis?
Yes, definitely, I can. So, hypnosis is pretty powerful stuff. Our brains and the mind-body connection it's like fantastic. So, from the biology standpoint, we can actually change the way our brain perceives like temperature. And so we can use hypnosis for hot flashes. And there's been, multiple studies that have shown this, that we can actually use hypnosis to change the way our brain thinks about the temperature. What happens in menopause is the production of estrogen in our bodies drops down significantly. And this does a whole bunch of things. One of the major things that it does is it changes the way that the brain perceives heat, right? And so when we have a hot flash, it's our body is telling us, oh my God, it's hot in here. Let's cool it off. Let's activate all the systems that will, get you to cool things off. We'll move your heart rate up. We'll get, the sweat going. And so while it's like 70 degrees in the room, everyone else is fine. You're having your own private summer. Your body is like trying to protect you and cool you off. And so one of the ways that is also stimulated is if we're stressed. Again, studies have shown that like if you have high stress levels, if you're anxious about things, that is often a trigger for hot flashes. And so the way that we use hypnosis to address the hot flashes is one, by telling the brain actually is 70 degrees in here. It's not hot. Like let's not go crazy. Let's keep it cool, right? So we tell our brain, we retrain the brain to realize the actual temperature. And then we also retrain the brain about stress, okay? Because most of the time with stress, stress is a cycle. And what we're not doing is like releasing the end of the cycle. And so we need to kind of get through the cycle. A lot of times the stress it's not necessarily a true stress. So we're so worried that, our son is not going to get into the school that he chose or won't get the job, whatever those concerns are. And it's actually not a like real time stress. Your life is not in danger. You're not running from a tiger. Like you're actually here and then now and actually okay. And so if we can retrain our brain on that area about how to deal with those moments of anxiety, those moments of concern, to kind of calm the system, get us back into parasympathetic, and kind of ease up some of those hot flashes. So that's one of the ways, just one of the ways that we can use hypnosis. But yeah, to speak to the point of the retraining our mind about like cultural, influences on how we feel about our bodies. One of the things that I always reference is that our bodies, like, even if there's flab on them, like, they're carrying you through. Like, without our bodies, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
We don't have to think about how our stomach digests the food. We just eat the food and it does it. What a miracle is that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so if we can think about things and understand that our bodies are beautiful, and it doesn't actually really matter what it looks like. That's a game changer if we can make that switch. It's hard to do. It's not easy, because we've been told for at least, I'm about to be 50, but we've been told for 45, 50 years that you have to be a size 6, 34, 24,
Yep.
the whole, I don't remember what the exact measurements are, but the bikini body, you've got to be blonde with blue eyes and it's perpetually 25 years old. Like, it's just unrealistic patriarchal profile of what a human being is supposed to be, and what brings value to that human being. But that stuff, and I'm going to use some French here, is bullshit. Like, that's bullshit.
Yep. Yep.
Right? We are inherently valuable because we exist. And so learning to make that switch in our brains is a part of how hypnosis can work,
Yeah.
for some of the behavioral things.
Yeah, and it's such a I actually recently had a hypnotherapy session,
Oh, you
and
did?
it made a huge change. I was struggling with something more, just my thinking around getting feedback from people. And it was amazing that when the hypnotherapy, I was thinking it was like, I'm dating myself now, but the amazing Kreskin, where you got on stage and he made you do all kinds of weird stuff, but you're totally aware of what's happening, and
Yeah.
you're able to just go way deeper into your thoughts. And it's so empowering to go through that
Yeah.
process. But I had never thought of dealing with the menopause symptoms
Oh,
using it.
yeah.
So, wow.
Definitely. But
Yeah.
again, because and part of the problem with Western medicine is that we've compartmentalized things, like, okay, this is your digestive system, and this is what you do over here. You got to eat this thing, eat this probiotic, and that will help your digestive system. But it's all connected,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's actually now research coming out, like with our gut microbiome, that the specific type of bacteria that lives in the stomach sends messages to our brain that affect our well-being and depression. And so it's all connected. And
Yeah.
so when we have that lens and have that realization, it makes it a little bit more clear when we understand why, how some of these, like, mind body things can work for us.
Yeah, yeah, and stop treating the symptoms and treat the whole person holistically.
The
It
whole
really has
thing,
a
yeah.
huge impact. So that brings us to the next topic we wanted to touch base on, and that's like the importance of self-care. So I know this is a big area of focus for you, I'm sure, with your patients. Can you talk a little bit about particularly self-care during divorce?
Definitely. Yeah. So again, when you go through a divorce, it is like, no matter or not if it's a, like, difficult divorce or a quote unquote smooth divorce, it's a big transition. And a lot of times we're so wrapped up in the process, the steps in it, that we don't pay attention to ourselves. And I think divorce is actually a really good time to do some self-reflection and see what's going on, within yourself. I know, like, if you've been married or in a couple with that person for a long time, a lot of times we lose a little bit of our identity because we've become, Mrs.
Absolutely.
whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we've lost or like kind of put on the shelf who we were before. And then sometimes we didn't really know who we were before. If you've been married for a long time and you got married at a young age, like some of that developmental stuff didn't actually take place because you like got married. And so I have a few clients who got to that point and they're like, who am I? Like, I
Yeah,
don't know what I'm doing. Like, and it can
definitely.
feel very, very scary because you're like in a new place. And so I think it's always great, like the work that you're doing, coaching clients, to have a little extra support, because it's like you're out in this wilderness. To have that support is very helpful, and realizing that support is self-care.
Hmm.
To kind of, it's like a pillow, like a soft pillow where you can rest. And take care of those needs, figure out who you are, take the time to tap into your authenticity, to feel who you are, and really realize the things that you want to do.
Right.
Where are you going, and have that space and time to do that. And I think it's during divorce is one of the best times to kind of take that moment to do that.
It is. It's, I always say to people, divorce is not an end. It is a pivot or it's a transition. And
Definitely.
you can use it as a time to grow and to expand and to get healthy, whether it's mentally or physically or emotionally or spiritually, whatever it needs to be. And having different tools like the hypnosis, like speaking with a doctor such as yourself who specializes in treating women and holistically treating
Right.
their patients really sounds like something that would be incredibly important.
Yeah, it's very helpful. If it's something that you haven't done before, I'd recommend it for everybody, to kind of set that time aside. A lot of people have not had any therapy, have not had any kind of like emotional support for these transitions that are very difficult. And
Yeah,
a lot of times, like we think, oh, okay, I have my girlfriend or I have my cousin or whoever will be there to support you. But sometimes the family and friends, like they come in with their own preconceived like notions, and this is what this is what you need to do, like like drop that zero, like especially if they know like the history that you have with your ex. It's sort of like they have a bias that is not necessarily as supportive to your personal self-care needs. There a lot of times, and we have the best intentions, right? But like we're mad for you. We're
yeah,
mad about what's going on. Like, he did you wrong, and all of those things that can come with the family, friends support
sure. Yeah,
experience.
most
So
definitely. And also, if they've been through their own divorce, they tend to see everything through that lens. And
yeah.
even if it was a bad one, then they're going
Yeah,
to be hypersensitive to, you
yeah.
got to get in there, get that lawyer that's going to go after
Mhm.
everybody. And yeah, so this has been phenomenal. Dr. Williams, you have shared so much information. I can't say thank you enough. What is the one thing that you would like, that golden gem or that nugget of wisdom that you want to leave with people today?
Yeah, the thing that I always want to share is that this is not the end. It's never the end, right? If you're still here, like you said, it's a pivot. And all of the things, all of the dreams that you have for yourself or that you once had for yourself, they're still very real. Like there are still options in terms of getting those things back and having, like a sexual life that is abundant and pleasurable. It's still an option. So don't tap out. That's what I always tell people. There are options. There's pharmaceutical options that can help. There are mind body practices that can help. There's behavioral change that can help. And there is a support system available to you. So don't tap out. All of that is still there. And I've lived it myself. And so can you.
That's wonderful. And thank you. And I think that's such a positive message because I think a lot of women are like, oh crap, like I'm at
Yeah.
the end now. What's left? It's not,
Yeah.
it's not. There's lots left to go. So Dr. Williams, you were kind enough to give a free gift for everybody that will be in the show notes. If people want to reach out and find out more about you or connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
So yeah, you can again check the show notes. There's a couple links in there. The website is goodgroove.com. You can reach me on Instagram as well at goodgrooveco. And yeah, I'd be happy to interact and see you.
And thank you so much. And I am definitely going to connect with you on social media because I definitely want to follow you and get your excellent words of wisdom from now on. And so, Dr. Williams, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
And I'd like to thank everybody else for listening in to the D-Shift podcast. And don't forget to tune in again next week. Thanks for listening and supporting the D-Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D-Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.